The proceedings. I'm very happy that a number of senior friends from respective institutions like the Northeastern Institute of Science and Technology, then NIN, and the Jodhpur All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Arun Singh will soon be with us. And I'm also very conscious of the fact that this is going to reach out to a larger audience in terms of what we tell them about our food products, with particular reference to milk and milk products today. I request Dr. Bhanu Prakash Reddy, who is a very senior scientist at the National Institute of Nutrition, Hyderabad, and with enormous international exposure, to kindly kickstart the discussion with his observations. Professor Bhanu Prakash Reddy.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you, sir. And I mean, before I start the discussion, I must actually thank Dr. Shastri for introducing me to this elite group. And of course, we have been doing this together in some other forums. What actually I do is in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I have prepared some slides so that it helps us to go through what is available. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. Kindly go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, sir. So then we can actually take up the discussion or any points that come up during the presentation or afterwards. So let me just share the presentation. Yeah. Sir, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So now, basically, I would like to give some brief background to the whole topic. So the required components in the food are like major ones are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrate percentage in our requirement is about 60%, not more than 60, but anywhere between 45 to 60. And the protein, that is in the terms of contributing the calories. As well as proteins, we can have up to 15%. This actually I'm saying in keeping in our recent recommendations. We have actually revised our recommendations for the dietary requirements, keeping that we actually reduce the calorie intake for the sedentary people about 300 calories compared to what we recommended about 10 years ago. 2010 recommendations have been revised recently and the health minister has released. So keeping that in view, I just projected this. So the fat should contribute to the calories anywhere between 25 to 30%. Proteins should contribute up to 15%. And carbohydrates should contribute 45 to 60, but it should not be more than 60. So in that context, and anyway, the micronutrients which do not contribute to the calories, but they are very, very essential. So in this background, I actually want to project this picture that we recently released what is called My Plate for the day. The My Plate should have something like this. I hope you could see the things here. What you have here in the fruits and different groups, you may not see the values. Therefore, I have them in the table. For example, cereals, including Nutra-cereals, it should be about 250 to 300. Pulses should be about 90 grams. When I say pulses, they have to be replaced if they are vegetarians or non-vegetarians should have eggs, flesh meats. All that together, which are the major sources for protein, should be about 90 grams. And then, of course, milk and milk products, 300 grams or 300 ml. Then we have recommendation for vegetables and fruits. You may see that it is unrealistic, but that is the recommendation. 350 vegetables and 150 fruits, together 500 grams per day. And nuts and seeds, 20 grams. And fats and oils, of course, about 30 grams. So this all together should contribute to 2000 calories or 2100 calories. Now, I want to make a point here. As I told, in place of pulses, we should also include eggs and flesh foods, those who take them. Otherwise, those who take only the, vegetarian food, they have to really think about other sources to have some of the nutrients that I'm going to say. But the here problem, you may say that 300 ml of milk and milk products, which is actually bare requirement. But I also have a point that actual consumption of milk and its products are only 8.7% in rural and 14% in urban population compared to our recommendation. Sir, please note this point. Our recommendation is 300 ml, but the consumption in rural areas is not more than 30%, in urban areas not more than 15% with respect to our recommendation. So the mean intake of milk and dairy in India as together, if you take that, 120 grams per day as against 300. Now the function of milk is to, I want to highlight the importance of milk. Then we can take a decision what are the other issues with the milk. The function of milk is to nourish and promote the growth of young ones, and it contains all the essential nutrients as well as multiple anabolic factors. And we all know that traditionally milk and milk products are the major part of our diet, especially in cold climates. And more importantly, milk is a wholesome food. Unlike, it is not just a mix of few nutrients. Milk has been more than a source of nutrients because of this reason, particularly for newborn and of course even for slightly older infants for the growth and nourishment. So this is the reason the recommended intake of milk or equivalent products is given as 300 ml per day. This recommendation has been justified to meet nutritional requirements for calcium, protein, and other nutrients. Other important factors here are calcium and proteins. Other micronutrients I will show you in the subsequent slides. But the question comes, health benefits of higher intake of milk, more than 300, or particularly more than 500. There is no evidence to say that more than 500 you have got benefits. Sometimes even we have adverse. This is where I think we need to strike the balance. And I also want to highlight the point, in those countries, particularly I think with the data I have seen from US, they are consuming almost double to the recommendation what we have, like 300 ml. I think they are consuming double to it. They are consuming close to 600 or sometimes maybe more than 600, but certainly 500. Maybe that may be a concern, but for us, I think as long as we are not exceeding 300 ml and taken care of other safety aspects, I think that is required for various other reasons. Now, I also want to inform you about the composition of the milk. I think one of the questions in Dr. Venkateswarlu or Suryanarayana garu shared that, there's only water, what else you have? I think water is the major composition in the milk, but then we have protein about 4 to 5 grams, mostly 4 grams, fat about 5 to 7. Then we have carbohydrates between 5 to 8 grams, all of which contributes to between 300 to 450 calories. Then most importantly, we have very, very important essential minerals and micronutrients such as thiamine, riboflavin. Very essential here is riboflavin. Milk is one of the best sources for vitamin B2, in addition to calcium and of course B12. I want to highlight a point here. Sir, if we are the vegetarians, we are not taking any other flesh foods or eggs or anything else. This is the only source that gives the B12. And you see 0.45 micrograms per 100 ml. If you say that we are taking 300 ml, it would be about 1.5 micrograms, which is our recommendation. Earlier recommendation was 1 microgram per day, but our new recommendation is 2 micrograms per day. If you are a vegetarian, this is the only source that contributes to your B12. And then, what happens when pasteurization and all that. Pasteurization is basically to remove the pathogens and kill the germs. But there are questions. In the pasteurization, you will lose all of it. No. There is a loss of 10% of some of these nutrients, either it is thiamine, riboflavin, or B12, but not more than that. In the worst situation, it cannot be more than 20% loss of these nutrients. And of course, fermentation and fermented products, we know that there are some certain changes, even the structure of the stature of the proteins, and some of these, particularly lactose content is decreased in fermented products, whether it's a curd or other things, cheese, etc. There are other fractionations which will yield different components. And of late, milk and oil are the only two media that government is doing mandatory fortification of vitamin A and vitamin D. If you are not taking milk, and if oil consumption is very limited, that fortification we are going to lose the opportunity. In addition to this composition, it also contains antioxidant minerals such as selenium, alpha-tocopherol, particularly some of the immunoglobulins which have got health benefits. And some products of the milk, particularly the traditionally prepared ghee, is good in conjugated linoleic acid, which has got tremendous health benefits. I would not bother you to go through this slide, that effect of processing, what happens, I already mentioned it. So then in the processing, there are many questions, what all that can happen. But in the one that I highlighted in green, protein denaturation does not affect overall digestibility, despite this, whatever the pasteurization and all that happens. So it is unlikely to affect the digestibility of the protein that we are going to consume. That is the only point I want to make. Other than all other points, probably we will skip that. Then I have a slide comparing with the other, human milk. If you see here, the major one without fat and with fat, the milk, fat-free milk and whole milk is the only difference with the total fat and saturated fat. Otherwise, I won't see much of a difference between the fat-free and whole milk. And you see more or less the composition is not a big difference. So, well, I think in some debates the question is that why can't we replace or have substitutes for milk, like such as almond milk, soya milk, all sorts of things, including rice, oat milk, etc. But for the top portion, if you see the one that I have put it in a blue box, compared to the cow milk that you have all the vitamins and micronutrients, none of these milks have got these components. Well, you have other things like protein and fat, it is there, but none of these important essential nutrients, they are not there in those other substitutes that we are likely to recommend. So that is one important point I would like to inform this knowledgeable group.
Dr.
We
Bhanuprakash,
have got many other bioactive components here. So I think we could, sir.
Sorry for the interruption. Can we go back to the earlier slide where you showed the composition of human milk and the animal milk?
Yeah.
Because there, I think one point is this potassium, calcium content, towards the end. Now, do you think it's within permissible limits, or does it raise any issue?
Yes. The recommended amount, that 300 milk, if you calculate that, it is within. Actually, one of the best properties of milk is because of this potassium, it is likely to provide hypotensive effect. That means it's good for hypertension.
I see. Similarly, calcium and phosphorus.
Calcium, of course, for bone, and other fractures. Yes.
The human milk, I think the animal milk, less. There is a significant change.
Significantly high in cow milk, yes, sir.
Correct. Okay. Sorry for the interruption.
With calcium, there's one property physiologically, that's why I think growing kids needs milk. There is one property of the calcium, particularly the bone formation that takes place all the way up to 16 to 18 years. The calcium that we store in the bones up to 18 or 20 years is the one that protects us for the rest of the life. Whatever amount of calcium you take after 20 years or 25 years, the absorbability, the utility is not more than 1 or 2%. Therefore, whatever you store calcium up to 18 to 20 years in the bone, that is the one which protects us for the rest of the life. That is the physiological property of the bone calcium.
Okay, kindly go ahead.
Yeah, and there are many other bioactive, as I said, immunoglobulin, growth factors, and of course oligosaccharides, vitamins, and lactoferrin. Lactoferrin is one of the antibacterial or whatever you call infection agent that we have in the milk. So what all in all, I would like to say is that milk components take part in metabolism in several ways by providing essential amino acids, vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, and they are all important for the absorption of other nutrients that we take from other sources. This is one of the important property of the milk. So milk protein is especially rich in amino acids that stimulate the muscle synthesis and growth of the muscle. The one property of the cow milk compared to all other milks, or for that matter plant proteins, when compared to plant proteins, milk protein is the one which has got the anabolic effect. Anabolic effect means synthesizing and preparing, like we all synthesize the proteins, whereas plant proteins do not have this much of anabolic effect. And the last point, which is very relevant for us, in developing countries like India, where prevalence of malnutrition is more due to deficiency of variety of other nutrients in the diet, it is always recommended to include milk and milk products for stimulated linear growth, infant development, and for proper bone development and strength during the adolescence stage. To highlight this point, I have a couple of slides. Recently, we did a survey in and around Hyderabad. This is our own study. My PhD students and a group of people are involved in this. We have analyzed the micronutrient status. That means particularly a good number of vitamins here. If you see, majority of the vitamins B2, B6, folate, B12, the prevalence of deficiency is close to 50%. These are so-called apparently healthy people. That is our micronutrient status. That means anywhere between 30 to 50% deficiency of these micronutrients we have, in the so-called apparently healthy adults. Then we also looked at their dietary intake. This is calculated by a term called probability of adequacy. If you see the last column, please skip all the columns. Last column where I am showing the pooled one, except iron, none of these nutrients have reached adequacy more than 50%. In fact, B12 is pathetic. It's only 6% adequacy. So this is the problem. But then I want to show the same thing in the next slide. If you see what are all the food groups that are contributing to these nutrients, if you take particularly the cereals or pulses, and I have highlighted what milk and milk products contributes to what are the nutrients. For example, if you take milk and milk products, they contribute 60% to the calcium intake in the study that we have done. Compared to all other food groups, they are contributing less than 10%. Likewise, I can go on saying that if you come to B12, milk and milk products are contributing to 80% of our intake compared to all other food groups. So this is, I think, a practical issue that we have to keep in mind. Well, safety issues or other things are secondary. Well, majority of the nutrients we do have an upper safe limit, but for the information, in case if Dr. Venkateswarlu wants, I would like to show this later. Beyond this limit, it is not good for the health. Well, what are the, if you want to substitute milk, whether it's a cow milk or buffalo milk, what are the other alternatives? Breastfeeding is the best thing that NIN or for that matter anybody recommends, exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, afterwards some supplements. But then you can think of, hypoallergenic formulas, amino acid formulas, soya formulas, but all of them have got some benefits and some problems. Particularly some of them have got, the problem of, the allergy and, processing, etc., etc., etc. So I actually highlighted here, like if you take soya milk, what happens? It contains plant hormones that we are talking about. From in the cow milk, what are the hormones? But soya milk also has got phytoestrogens and phytohormones. And then if you see coconut milk, there's no protein; it's only fat. Likewise, you need to weigh the balance. For example, if you take oat milk, it is high carbs but low protein. So therefore, we need to see which one we want to have it based on the recommendation. That's why my first slides are what is the recommendation, what is requirement. Now we also have a few other things like as of now, these are the things: pork meat, casein, egg, and potato proteins are classified as the excellent quality proteins with an average term called DIAS. DIAS is digestible, indispensable amino acids. Anything that above 100 is the best score. Only these proteins have got this value more than 100. But of course, even whey and soya proteins have good quality, but that is more than 75%, equivalent to probably the milk proteins. But none of the plant proteins have got this value. So that is one problem in India, that we take majorly plant-based proteins. The quality of the protein in plant-based protein is the problem: digestibility and the value of DIAS or PDCAS. Anyway, instead of taking you through all this thing, the value of plant-derived proteins, including rice, wheat, is limited by lower content of lysine and some of the other sulfur-containing amino acids, particularly essential amino acids, branched-chain amino acids, which are required for the anabolic activity. So I will not take you through all of this one. The one that I have put in red, the presence of some bioactive compounds named anti-nutritional factors such as phytic acid, protease inhibitors, hemagglutinin, so on and so forth, is also a problem in plant proteins. So then animal studies found that plant-based proteins have less of capacity to improve lean and skeletal muscle mass than animal-based proteins. When you are talking about animal-based protein, here I am always equating with the milk and milk products. If we are not taking the other meat proteins. So this is again the same thing what I showed you the value and the amino acid composition. If you see the amino acid composition, which are the required amino acids, the milk products the right side have got the our animal proteins have the best value of these amino acids compared to the wheat, maize, soya, whatever the animal proteins. So same again, I'm showing the DIAS value for the whole milk or whole powder compared to wheat. That is the value. Now, few other points, like, when you say pros and cons, I have highlighted the health benefits, whether it's a bone health or vitamins, minerals, etc., etc. There are some issues like lactose intolerance, and then there is also this debate about A1, A2 milk. I would like to inform this group in the next couple of slides, and some diseases like cancer and diabetes. What is this issue of A1 and A2 milk? A1 and A2 milk types are most prominent, and A1 milk is the most consumed in the world, obtained from western origin of the cows, whereas A2 milk is the present in our native Indian cows. And the only difference between A1 and A2 is that because of a mutation in the gene that codes for the gene, there is one peptide released, a 7 amino acid peptide when you take A1 milk. That is called beta-casomorphin. So this beta-casomorphin is not released when you take A1 milk, which is our native Indian cows. But then is it a problem? When they have done a systematic scientific studies, yes, they have shown that when you take the beta-casomorphin peptide, that is the A2 milk, you may likely to have some of these problems like type 1 diabetes or autism related things. But at the end, I will show you one slide. There are limited studies, and in a very small fraction of people, these issues have been noticed. But on the whole, by and large, there is no difference between A2 and A1 milk, because A2 casein is the protein that has been produced from the cows since before they were domesticated over 1,000 years ago. It has not happened recently, and it has no negative effect on human health. And I would not repeat many of those things, because there are a number of studies showing that by and large in the entire world you have both the proteins consumed by good number of people. Maybe when you conduct a systematic study taking these ones in a high amount, you might see some of these problems, and also there could be other factors that are contributing to these problems along with the different types of milk. But by and large, there is no difference between A1 and A2 milk. And I also want to highlight here a point. About 10 years ago, we have got a letter from somebody, asking what is this business of A1 and A2. I prepared a big report on behalf of my director, and that has been submitted. So I did an extensive study. To my knowledge, as an experimental scientist, nutrition scientist, A1, A2, there's not much of a difference. So, but just in the lighter sense, if somebody asks me to talk about what is the problem of the beta-casomorphin, I can take and produce a slide like this. Beta-casomorphin can bring the hell down. So that's, as a scientist I can do that, but in reality it is not. Well, lactose intolerance is a problem, because lactose intolerance is a decreased ability to digest lactose found in dairy product, completely different from milk allergy. Many people get confused with lactose intolerance and milk allergy, because some people do have allergy to some proteins, not only wheat gluten, but to even milk proteins. Therefore, that is different, and lactose intolerance is different. That's why I want to highlight this point here, and which is mainly because of the enzyme called lactase. So there are actually 4 different types of lactose intolerance. We also should be clear about it: primary, secondary, developmental, and congenital. Primary lactose intolerance is when the amount of lactase declines as people age. That is the normal process when we age. And secondary is due to injury to small intestine, such as from infection, celiac diseases. This is the main problem. Many people who have got the leaky gut, that is because of the celiac diseases or other infections, the gut has got leaky pores, so that these things can leak into that. That is the major problem of lactose intolerance, then the actual primary intolerance. And also developmental intolerance may occur in premature babies and usually improves over a short period of time. But congenital one is the real lactose intolerance where you have the genetic problem of lactose. So at the end, actually, if any one of you are interested, this is an excellent review article from Harvard Medical School, a group of scientists. I can share this article. Why I have put this here is that this article has written excellently, I mean, in the very balanced. They have not taken any sides. They have shown what are the benefits, what are the problems. But from the same review, I would like to read a couple of sentences for you. If breast milk is not available, cow milk can add important nutritional value during early childhood. The second sentence you see very balanced. However, normal growth and development can be obtained throughout childhood without dairy products if attention is given to diet quality. If attention is given to other diet product which can substitute the milk benefits, you need not to take milk. That is an important statement I would like to add here. And of course, cow milk has been hypothesized to cause the type 1 diabetes and all that. Even this review says it is not a big problem. I don't want to read that. Well, we have some issues about, pasteurization and all that. This is a very, very nicely done meta-analysis. They also say that in the pasteurization, we don't lose much of it. There is a loss. They have shown how much loss, which one is lost, how much. But by and large, the loss is not more than 20%. I think this is my information for the group. And if you ask any specific question, I will try to answer. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Bhanu Prakash. It's a wonderful presentation, very, very balanced and nuanced. And any questions from any of the friends, participants, etc.?
I have one this thing.
Yes, Sundararayan, please kindly go ahead.
What exactly is happening when milk is getting converted into curd?
Yeah, so basically it is the coagulation of the proteins that becomes attain a different structure, and then it becomes a solidified precursor because of some bacteria that they take part in this process. But some amount of lactose content is decreased when it is fermented. But otherwise, majority of the nutrients, I think there's not much difference.
But is it a reorientation of the proteins?
Yes,
it is. In the case of reorientation of the proteins, the activity with the human, the system, does it change?
No, that's what I told you. The digestibility part is not, one of the slides I specifically put that during the pasteurization, I mean after pasteurization or fermentation, the digestibility has not been changed. So ultimately the proteins have to be digested and broken down to amino acids. Yeah, well, orientation makes some effect on digestibility, but ultimately it is the amino acids that have to be taken up into the system.
No, then why the curd is much better than milk? This concept, why it is coming up in that?
Curd is better than milk because we have, during the process, we have got produced beneficial probiotic bacteria in the curd.
Okay, that is true. But
the milk, we don't have
the milk structure has not changed. See, the basic structure of milk, except reorientation of the proteins.
Yeah. Yeah, the of the proteins, sir. The major part in the protein is
only.
Yeah.
May I say something?
Yes, sir.
Milk is a colloidal. Milk is a stable colloid, and when it is undergoing this conversion with the bacterial help, this colloid will break, and a little bit of small structural orientations will take place because it's particles, lots of suspended particles that are there in aqueous medium. So it breaks down and then it will form another one with a substantially decreased lactose content and with lots of probiotics. And this
Probiotics.
bacterial thing, it will be fermented. The fermentation process, as you know, this
Yeah.
goes on, and the bacterial colony will develop. And as you see, the density of milk and yogurt is not very different. The
Yeah,
volume
that's what I
is
see,
substantial.
actually.
So it is actually a biotransformation that takes place wherein there is a very, very small difference in the nutrient quality. But then we will try to come back to, after our discussion, the Ayurvedic thing, the circadian clock, why we have to take milk in the night, yogurt in the morning, because there are quite a few things. The simple administration of there is a huge difference between humans and bomb calorimeter. This modern science will try to think that you garbage in and garbage out. How you put the garbage is more important in the body. It's not that you just put some, this is a problem with our cholesterol. Lots of people don't want to eat nuts like cashew, I don't eat because there is cholesterol. How much is the cholesterol in cashew? Exactly 0%. And cholesterol itself is a pharmaceutical industry driven bogus mafia which wanted to make money, which rips off a large number of people. This is a little bit of a knowledge toxicity that is going on. So we will have to understand from a rational point of view what is scientifically valid and what is scientifically not valid. The precision with which we want to look at is very important. So this is milk is a baggage of a huge number of proteins, huge number of particles. It's not one entity. So it is undergoing some change. It's I don't say it's lots of bonds are broken and formed where you will have new molecules which were generated. It is a reorientation of this. This is like a biotransformation where fermentation
Yeah.
plays an important role.
No, that's what I say. It's
Simply
only
coagulation
physical
of the proteins, sir.
reorientation.
Yeah,
It's not a
coagulation and
chemical
denaturation
reaction.
of proteins. But just to add on a couple of points to Dr. Narari Shastri's comments is that, sir, for adults and particularly elders, I would recommend the fermented, like a curd and buttermilk kind of products than milk because of the, probiotics and other health benefits with the same amount of nutrients and same nutritive value.
So, then another thing is this curd and buttermilk. That also again we have the differences actually because it is a more dilute system. Buttermilk is a more dilute system.
More dilute system.
So that means you are actually making more digestible. That is the thing. Yes.
Yes.
You are making more digestible.
Exactly.
And reducing the content of the protein. That is the more
Right.
important thing there.
While doing so, if you want, you can remove some amount of fat in making buttermilk. But
Yeah,
it's up to us.
basically you're removing the fat actually.
Yeah, we can do both ways.
Yeah.
Without removal also, we can do it.
Yeah. So Dr. Venkateshwarlu, any comment? on
Yeah,
that?
now
Yeah.
we'll request Mr. Venkateshwar to make his observations and we come back for a
Yes.
free discussion maybe. After Mrs. Rama also makes her observation. She is herself, she has studied nutrition. Yes, Venkateshwar garu.
My request to you is this vitamin A can be had from greens much more than any other food. That's what I understand.
Sir, you said about vitamin A, right?
Yeah, carotenes.
Yeah, of course. We are not saying that milk is the best source for vitamin A. When I listed, vitamin A is one of the things. But vitamin A can, yeah.
You see, carrots are the most advantageous one for carotenes.
Yeah, carrots,
Directly the
drumsticks,
carotenes of 22 carbon.
carrot, mango, drumsticks.
Yeah.
Totakura.
I think that carrots is the
Yes,
only
it's,
source, but better than carrots, we have many
what
other.
is called the Modisac. It is.
Yeah. Can you,
Totapura is Modisac actually. It contains iron also, a lot of iron also. That is.
yeah. Yes, Mr. Venkateshwar Garu, your observation, sir?
Okay, it's done. Now I request Narahara Sastri Garu to put forward his views on milk and other things. Then I will join at the last speaker.
That is after Mrs. Rama.
I don't know.
No, Mrs. Rama will also make some observations, I thought.
Okay, no problem.
So, Madam being a nutritionist, maybe her observations before me may be better.
Yeah.
Yes, Rama?
We are Aam Aadmi.
Yeah,
Can you
Rama.
hear me?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Your audio is
Can you
okay.
hear
Yeah.
me?
Yes.
Dr. Bhanprakash Reddy Gary's presentation. It's one of the most comprehensive and excellent presentations I've noticed from a scientist. Congratulations, sir. Very good it is. And so easily absorbable for the audience. And experience-wise, as a mother and as a practicing dietitian last 45 years, I have relied on milk most. With the patients and in the hospitals also, especially where the Ryle's tube feeds are concerned, there's no alternative. If you have to give the patient about every 2 hours feed and it's 2.5 hours feed and about 10 to 12 feeds a day, at least the 6 feeds or in a day are with milk. So milk is a sustaining food as far as I'm concerned for the normal and at least for all those who have been in as patients. And for children, I think that's the best food. Growing up in India and growing children and grandchildren, we depend on the milk and make sure that they have their 2 glasses of milk and a bowl of curds in the afternoon. That's the pattern that we've been following. And we find it's effective. Children are growing optimum. And if they miss, and especially during fevers, even if we skip anything else, we make sure that they have their couple of glasses of milk or cups of milk morning and evening. That's the consumption. And they were speaking about milk and curds. The curds, I find little Ayurvedic base I follow there, and also the mother's, grandmother's experience at home. Curds, we prefer to remove the curds. Of course, for the children, we prefer to not remove the cream, but for the adults, we remove the cream and make it into butter and then ghee. For children, we prefer to serve them curds with the cream on it. It's good for the children and it helps their various activities, and especially the sports children. I go out of my way. I've been on the Sports Authority of India, and I make sure that they do have their bowls of curds during the day. And according to Ayurveda, which also I follow, but curds when diluted, when churned, the molecules, there is a difference. Perhaps it gets into some nanogram way of better absorption, because I've not done the scientific base for it, but I find tremendous responses, and I've learned from my patients over so many years. So what I give them buttermilk at various dilutions, especially when they have the kidney stones or gallstones or something. I give them buttermilk about 6 times diluted, to 6 to 8 times to 1 cup. And then during the day, they keep having it with certain additives. And I find that along with whatever medication they take, the homeopathy stone or something, and after a few days, the stone does come out. And then this does help them. And especially during summers, we do suggest this buttermilk, and it does help. And also for the blood pressure patients, I've learned from a patient, when their BP is high, we suggest that they dilute churn the curds, make it buttermilk, and dilute it to 4 times. And then they consume that, and it does help reduce the blood pressure if they consume it, without any other food. If the BP is very high and they've taken their medicine and it hasn't come down, we suggest this and suggest a cold pack on their nose with their head bent backwards and their feet in the cold water, and it immediately comes down in about half an hour. I've learned it from a patient, and I've been suggesting it to many patients. And another thing is, somehow buttermilk is an excellent base for absorption. And I don't know if everybody has, this also I learned from another patient who told me that asafoetida helps all the hormone absorption. So I suggest buttermilk with asafoetida as a last drink in the night, a little early, whenever, around 7:38. And I noticed that it does help the prostate hormone patients. I've not done research study, but probably over the years, maybe I'd have given it to about 5,000-6,000 patients, and all of them have come back with positive response to me. So this is my experience with curds and milk. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Chakraparnika. Thank you.
Wonderful, Raman, your practical experience. And one last point requesting Dr. Bhanu Prakash Reddy is, what about other milk products like kova, then gulab jam or whatever? I mean, sweets. What is your suggestion? What's your takes? A lot of children like it, and they seem to be really relishing. Not only children, elders. My father is also very fond of them. He is 90.
Okay, sir, I think I probably forgot to make this point in the beginning. I think Madam would be the right person to say about the kova, gulab jamun, and other things. The reason is that I am not a nutritionist, neither a food scientist. I happen to be a biochemist working at the National Institute of Nutrition and nutritional biochemist. But before Madam says something about the things that you have asked, I want to add a couple of points. See, it is the dairy technology and the tools that we use, the way that we process is the main issue here, sir, with the time. Because see, if we see some of the milk products that we are using, the ghee, traditionally made ghee is totally different from the butter that we use. Because there's a lot of difference in the process, and that makes a difference for its health benefits. I think Madam will agree with me, because the ghee that we make traditionally is different from the butter that we take from the dairy industry. Likewise, some of the products, whether it is cheese or paneer, etc., during the process, certain things happen. Some of them are good, but every development has got a other side of the coin. Therefore, I'm not competent enough to talk about that. Madam could talk about the kova, other things which I am not very, very familiar about it.
Regarding the
Sweets, of
butter,
course,
it is called Navanitam. Navanitam means freshly prepared butter. That is Navanitam. Nava means fresh. It has to be freshly prepared. That is what is actually the real butter. See, whatever the butter you are getting is not the butter. It is a processed system.
Yeah, I agree totally with it.
Yes.
Yes, Raman.
I do endorse what he's saying about whatever Mr. Bhanu Prakash Reddy is perfectly being scientific and correct. This the sweet products that you all are speaking of, they're very good. Actually, any day preferable to the maida sweets, to which we don't know what kind of fat they add. The rasgulla, the gulab jamun, the rasmalai, and the koa, etc. Concentrated forms. And in limited quantities, they're very appreciable. They're very good and easily digestible and comfortable to be. Pastry and Shrikhand is also a very good sweet, and people do enjoy that. So all the milk sweets are recommended and to be consumed fresh without getting into the bad situation. And all our payasams, as we call kheer, are milk based and with sweetened, either with jaggery or sugar, and they are very good. And where ghee is concerned, best is to remove the cream, set it into collect it in a bowl, set it into curds, and then keep shaking it. And every week take butter out of it, and probably once in 15 days make the ghee, and that is the best ghee. In fact, yesterday at one webinar with an Ayurvedic people, there was a kind of a discussion where they were wondering. One lady was endorsing that ghee must be consumed in liquid form. Whereas another senior Ayurvedic was differing. He was saying when you keep the cow's ghee, when you make it, the top of the ghee container will always be liquid. And so he says you should use that. And then your food must be hot. What you're eating on the table must be sizzling hot, and your ghee must be added to that, and it must melt on your hot food. And he was recommending that ghee should not be heated and reheated again. because certain changes, degenerative changes do take place. Probably I agree, because they heat it to a beyond a point when they put it on the stove. And maybe according to, generally also it's better to consume hot food and make sure that the ghee melts on it, like how you add on to the parathas. So like that, even with hot rice or whatever, all these micro millets they consume these days, you consume that hot and add ghee to it, it melts on it. Probably that's the good way. Say also idlis and dosas and all that. And butter, of course, contains more water content, so it's good to consume butter. Butter dosas and butter on idlis and all that.
Yeah.
And for piles, I noticed butter is an excellent medication. Also learned from a patient. I've not done research on it, but it's, I word by good mouth. I tell 10 patients and it works. So I suggest to more patients. So if anybody has piles, you suggest butter, good butter, fresh butter with black nuvulu, gingerly, til, kala til. You add that onto the butter and they consume 1 teaspoon in the morning for about 40 days mandalam. And it has had fantastic response. So milk and milk products to be used for general health as well as for medicinal purposes has been my experience, and it's been excellent. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
also sweets I do recommend. Thank you.
Yeah, please go
One
ahead.
point, sir, here I want to add. It was there in my slides, but I did not want to bother you with all the slides. The milk or milk products, particularly ghee, that comes from the ruminant cows, is the most important. Actually, the process of the ruminant animals is they produce a useful bacteria. But the dairy thing that happens, in the West or even probably in our country now, they put all these grains and some other things, I don't know what not, they feed to these animals is totally different. The way that our grazing animals, they take the grass and then do the rumination, that makes a lot of difference to this milk and milk products, particularly to ghee. Actually, I proposed a project to DBT to study the ruminant cow's ghee effect with respect to all other butter and all that, which is going on now.
Okay. Thank you,
I'd
Raman.
like to add,
Yeah.
I'd like to add, there used to be one Dr. Vinodini Reddy who was director for N9 years ago. And her family had come to me for this blood pressure issue with the diet. And then I did suggest this buttermilk. And she went back and did some research and came back to me and confirmed whatever I've been doing with my patients was correct. And I don't know if such study is available in N9, but there are millions of studies there. Dr. Bhanuprakash Reddy, probably everything is digitized and you could locate it now.
Yeah, I'll check it, madam. Somebody did
Buttermilk
mention to
and
this me,
blood
but I did
pressure.
not get that.
Buttermilk and blood pressure, Dr. Vinodini Reddy, years ago, probably 30 years ago.
Yeah, I was not there at the time, but somebody did mention this to me. I want to see that. Okay, it was not available to me, but I want to see that. Thank you.
Do give me the information, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Narayan Sastry garu, would you like to say anything, or you want Mr. Venkateshwarlu to?
Yeah, I think Venkateshwarlu garu can say something.
Yeah, Mr. Venkateshwarlu, your turn.
Yes, sir. I will take up the origin of Homo sapiens, domestication of animals, how our GI tract is reacting to it, so that we can understand it fully. As for the Encyclopedia of Britannica, the origin of Homo sapiens, our earliest ancestors, first evolved around 3,15,000 years ago. The farming by human beings was said to be 12,000 years ago. Then after farming, domestication of animals took place. First domestication took place with the sheep. Sheep was domesticated around 11,000 years ago. It was followed by goats. Goats were domesticated around 9,500 years ago. And cows because they are unmanageable by us. They were domesticated 8,000 years ago. So, in spite of all this, production of milk started only 4000 BC only. It means human consumption of milk dates back to 6,000 years. This consumption of milk by humans is only a blink of the eye in human evolutionary history. We humans don't have the technology for absorption as well as the digestion of milk, because it is introduced into our system very late as a food product. To adjust to this, our digestive tract has to wait for a few thousand years more. In the meanwhile, milk has been doing all the damage that human flesh is heir to. It is allergenic. Kids are getting autoimmune diseases, ADHD, autism, eczema. Adults are getting asthma, arthritis, and various cancers. Our own heart disease, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, kidney disease, and so on and so forth. Coming to cow's milk, it has the perfect nutrient mix for a newborn calf, but it's not at all nutritionally correct for a human infant or a grown-up adult. The main purpose of milk is to give growth to the living beings. When growth has already taken place, where is the need for an adult to take milk? In addition to that, the insulin-like growth factor in milk, IGF-1, is causative for various cancers, including breast cancer, ovarian cancer in women, colon cancer, and prostate cancer in men. Coming to milk sugar lactose, it is causing leaky gut, which leads to inflammation of the entire body. And we know that inflammation is the root cause of all chronic degenerative diseases. Even in those who are lactase persistent, galactose in dairy products is causing cataract as well as Parkinson's disease. 87% of cow's milk is casein, the milk protein. And casein protein is causing several diseases. Take, for instance, your own osteoporosis, arthritis, even rheumatoid arthritis. The high protein content in milk promotes all stages of cancer, as revealed by Dr. T. Colin Campbell of China Study. For the general information, Dr. Campbell is considered to be the Einstein of nutrition. He made a study of China Study for 20 long years. He documented more than 8,000 statistically significant associations between dietary factors and various diseases. And the study includes all animal products, including milk, the cholesterol, fat, high calcium content in milk, causes plaque formation in the arteries. And that's the root cause of our heart disease. Coming to the research studies and reports on antibodies of cow's milk producing, they are destroying cow's milk protein. Antibodies of cow's milk protein are destroying the immune producing cells in the pancreas. That is the root cause of type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Even Harvard Nurses Health Study made a study particularly on fractures, and they found out that milk drinkers' fracture rate is higher than the non-milk drinkers. Some highly conscientious doctors in the Europe and America has gone into the causative factors of several diseases. Human hair, human flesh is hair too. They are able to reverse diabetes, heart disease with simple modification of the diet, taking away animal products including milk and introducing vegetarian diet. Take for instance Dr. Neil Barnard on diabetes. He reversed diabetes with vegetarian food only. And take another Dr. Dean Ornish on heart. He is known for reversing the heart disease and curing heart disease. A mere 4 weeks holiday of dairy holiday gives us relief to our asthma and arthritis, and prolonged abstinence from milk gives us freedoms from several diseases. Human flesh is heir to. As humans are said to be sapiens, we consider ourselves as thinking men, wise men. Why not we take a brief holiday from this morphine-like habit of taking milk and see how our health is affected or not affected? This is my observation about milk. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkateshwar Garu, for your highly thought-provoking or very passionate observations about the causative factors in milk and the diseases. Any particular views, sir? Dr. Narahari Sastry Garu?
Thank you very much. It's really interesting to have a look at different aspects of particular phenomena. Basically, every human being is different. There is a factor called pharmacogenomics. Now it is Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and based on that classifying humans is a sort of a mundane way of doing it. But there are people who are allergic to eggplant, bangan, a large number of people. There are people who are allergic to peanuts. Peanut allergy is very, very well established. Gluten allergy is very highly established. There are people who are allergic to dhania, especially in the northeast part of the country. This is very surprising. And there are people who are allergic to various things like tomato or gongura, chintakai, many things, which also has medicinal properties. So,
I'm allergic to onions.
onion, yeah, surely. And I wanted to have a very short presentation, and it's very important for us to realize that we need to take things in perspective, and I am completely of the opinion that health is so personal to an individual and it should never be outsourced to somebody to take care of your health. You only have to take care of your health. And this outsourcing can definitely not be given to a physician. And if you look at the WHO definition of health, health is a complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of a disease or infirmity. So there is a huge problem with individuals, especially educated individuals, about what is disease, what is healthy, what is disorder, what is malady, what is a problem. The best is the body knows how you ఏదైనా మితంగా ఉండటం ఇంపార్టెంట్. You will know exactly what is your health. Your own experience is the best way to check whether a particular food is allergic to you or not. Let us consider what is allergic or not in the next few minutes. I feel that we should not be carried away too much about someone else's experience. Someone else will have their experience and someone will have a positive experience, someone will have a negative experience. So, no two human beings will be similar. No two cancers are similar. Cancer is not a disease, it is probably a metabolic disorder. Diabetes is not a disease, it is a disorder. There is a huge difference between disease and disorders. There are rare metabolic disorders which are there, which will be affecting only 0.02% of a population. And these rare metabolic disorders should not be considered as diseases for humans because there are people who are not able to produce white blood cells. There are people, autism is a metabolic disorder. Epilepsy is a metabolic disorder or a rare metabolic disorder. There are different types of things. So we have to understand, and there's an Orphan Drug Act in the United States and in India also. There are many attempts to talk about the rare metabolic disorders, and Orphan Drug Act, which is equivalent to United States, is going to come here. There are a large number of people who are leaving the country to United States. At least I have 10 friends who left to United States because they are not able to get proper treatment in India. The reason is producing the drugs in India is too expensive. So, disease is a special state of mind, and disease can be physical, mental, and social. This is a definition of WHO. And infirmity, pain is an unmet medical need. There is no medical solution for pain. మీకు నరాల నొప్పి వస్తుంది, బ్యాక్ పెయిన్ వస్తుంది. There is no medical way of alleviating that. Infirmity, frailty. Frailty is a particular state of physical state for which there is no solution. And there is another disease which is very frequent in India, that people going to doctors and then asking them what disease they have. If a doctor says that you are healthy, they are very, very disappointed. I'm sorry, I'm taking it a lighter note. They keep on going to the doctor till that fellow says that some useless disease, some proper tritoma, some disease, if you don't know the name and give a 2-page explanation, you will be very happy. This is a nonsense at the highest level, and most of the mediocre knowledge that is generated by the Western guys without any understanding of the biochemistry, because biochemistry is one of the most neglected subjects. What is the requirement to consider that a person is diabetic or not in 1994? The fasting blood sugar should be more than 140. If anybody has a fasting blood sugar less than 140, he is not a diabetic. And before that, there should be sugar in the urine in 80s. That is a test. if there is a higher levels of sugar that is there in our blood circulation, they are not called diabetic. And what will be the sugar levels in a young infant? It will be 300. Most of this knowledge where people who are borderline diabetic are converted to full diabetic because of the lack of proper treatment. And we can discuss about it and then how do we deal with this. Now let us take another disease called hypertension. Hypertension, what is the first line treatment of hypertension? Earlier, it was diuretics. What is diuretic? You take a tablet and you pee more and then you lose your salts and you lose all the energy and then behosh ho jayega. So there are lots of people in Hyderabad, they will be given diuretic in March and April by some of the doctors. And I know that many people got fainted because they are taking blood pressure tablet. They can take it probably in winter or in some other season. Because if somebody takes a diuretic for the first time and they don't understand what is happening, there is a problem. And what is the second treatment? Beta blockers. What is the essential function of the beta blocker? They will reduce your BMR and the pulse rate will also be there and you will become really very less active. And there is a reason that if somebody is taking a beta blocker, maybe after several years, they will develop other metabolic disorders such as diabetes. And people won't accept. You come to a doctor and just like a mechanic, he will try to fix some 2-3 nuts and then Gadi, you put it on the road. And if there is any one more problem, they will put one more nut. But we are not going to the root cause of the problems. The root cause of the problem is if somebody is having an issue, they will have to take care of themselves first. Maybe they will have to listen to the grandmother. I am very impressed when Dr. Ramadevi has mentioned that yes, medical science is more of an epidemiological and evidence-based approach to alleviate the health issues rather than science. And by putting these scientific evidences rather imprecisely, we are getting into more problems and conflicts rather than solving them. So if you look at the milk and milk processing, you have whole milk, you have skimmed milk, you take cream, whey. There are a large number of products that you can get. And they will have their different properties and there are different things and I don't want to get into the details. So there is one review on food and nutrition, milk and dairy products, good or bad for human health, and assessment of the totality of the scientific evidence. And the conclusion of this manuscript says that the totality of available scientific evidence supports that intake of milk and dairy products contribute to meet nutrient recommendations and may protect against the most prevalent chronic diseases, whereas very few adverse effects have been reported. So there are people who have adverse effects. Few means if one person has an adverse effect, that one person has an adverse effect. If a one person does not have an adverse effect, that one person does not have an adverse effect. So this is a branch of knowledge where you cannot transfer your experience to someone else. Because in a linear fit, our R squared value is not 0.999, it may be 0.86. Whereas there are many people who are offline and people who are developing allergies or insensitivity due to genetic or epigenetic or other factors or their lifestyle. So this has been discussed by Dr. Bhan Prakash and others and I don't want to get into it. This is a sort of an important thing that body's adverse reactions to food. Food allergy is defined as an adverse reaction initiated by proven or strongly suspected immunological mechanisms. So you have an allergy or sensitivity. there are some things which are sometimes life-threatening if they are immunological, because you know that the lactate tolerance, when the babies were born, when they don't realize, they develop the allergies, and then that may be life-threatening, which is mostly that IgE mediated or non-IgE mediated. And for that, there is no active treatment yet. And avoidance of food allergen is the only strategy along with rescue therapy in case of emergency. This is true for a large number of people, and people can develop energy at any point of time. I saw a large number of people suddenly developing an energy for a particular type of a food, and then if they are taking 200 different types of food, there is no way other than physically screening what food that they have taken and identify the food and eliminate it. There is no other way. There is no other way. You have to identify what food will be allergic to that person. There are several institutions, one in Chandigarh that I know, and there are several institutions which has the test for allergy of 256 different types of foods. So once somebody develops allergy, they will have to say, maybe somebody can develop an allergy for something like jeera. Somebody can develop an allergy for anything, maybe one of the most, maybe somebody can develop an allergy for haldi, turmeric, for ginger. There are people who are there. And there are other things which are non-immunologic or non-toxic, like the lactose intolerance, which is enzymatic, where this enzymatic efficiency is compromised. And this will be specific to individual. If somebody, for example, alcoholism, there is an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme, which is very robust in some population and which is very weak in some population. Actually, in a group of people, this enzyme is very, very less effective. In Japanese, it is very well known that their alcoholic dehydrogenase mechanism is very poor. So, if a Japanese guy takes a 500 ml of beer, his reaction will be much hyper compared to a 500 ml of a beer for a Polish guy. He does not even understand anything. He may take 5 liters of beer, which is equivalent to 500 ml of beer for a Japanese guy. Okay. There are other things like pharmacological or biogenic amines. This is a subject area where we have biochemists or we have nutritionists, and we can go much deeper in. There is no end for that, and then we can try to find out what are the proteins which are upregulated and downregulated, and what is the mechanism that is there. And people can develop asthma. People can develop anything. But someone, before we recommend that you do, is we have all the characters that are coming in different avatars. In India, there are everybody. There is some Veeramachaneni guy comes, and then he says that you take coconut oil, drink, get up in the morning, take coconut oil. So he will be saying something, and some other person will come and he will tell his own stories, and somebody will say that you take only grains and nothing else. These are all good, but don't you develop allergy for jowar, for ragi? So there are things which can develop over a period of time, and you have a body which has mechanisms like G protein coupled receptors are there, and we also have efflux proteins like P glycoprotein or something like that, which will adapt to different changes that are subjected. For example, you take a medicine, this medicine will be effective for you for headache. After 6 months, that medicine will not be effective. Why? Because there is an efflux protein, for example, a P glycoprotein or an ABC transporter, which will throw away this active ingredient in the bloodstream out of that so that it will not reach. It is developing resistance. We all know that bacterial resistance. Bacteria will mutate. But body will also have different mechanisms of finding out the foreign body and protect itself from invading it. And is cold good or not? Traditionally, people say that it's very good because this is a sign of your fighting the immune system. How about COVID? People say vaccine or no vaccine, or whether it is a host pathogen interactions, or should we work on the pathogen, should we work on the host? There are a large number of reasons for things to happen the way it happened. So to come up with gross recommendations that this is good or this is not good may not be very much wise. And if you come to Bengal or Northeast, you get a food and వాళ్ళు పెరుగన్నంలో దే విల్ పుట్ ఏ రసగుల్లా ఆర్ ఏ గులాబ్ జామ్. మన తెలుగు వాళ్ళకి ఆవకాయ వేస్తేనే తింటాం కానీ పెరుగన్నంలో ఈ గులాబ్ జామ్ ఏంటి అంటే ఎవడి పిచ్చి వాడికి ఆనందం, ఎవడి ఫుడ్ వాడికి ఆనందం. సో ఇట్స్ నాట్ పాసిబుల్ ఫర్ అస్ టు బీ ఇన్ ద సేమ్ లైన్. In Poland, they will take only potato and a piece of pork, preferably. That's the food that they have. మనం 100 కిలోల బియ్యం కొన్నట్టే వాళ్ళు 100 కిలోల పొటాటోస్ కొనుక్కొని వస్తారు. And they will be eating the same thing. So, if you really wanted to impress upon somebody that this is the best way because I got benefited or somebody got benefited, will not work. And for the scientific evidence, we have what is there in that particular material. We can analysis chemically, but biochemistry is different and body is very different. And what has been ingested to a particular person will behave very differently in different individuals. ఇప్పుడు మనం సమోసాలు ఉన్నాయండి, పార్టీ చేసుకుంటాం. You get 550 samosas and give it to 50 people. Only 1 or 2 will definitely get affected. Okay, when there is a problem with their H. pylori or whatever that you have, this person, even if they take half a samosa, there will be an effect. Somebody will take 10 samosas and there will be no effect. So our engines are different, very different. Our fuel is different. Our consumption style is different, grossly different. So, అందరినీ ఒకే లైన్లో పెట్టడం అనేది we will have to think about it because the food like rice is not good. మనకి చిన్నప్పుడు ఏంటి, అన్నం తినకూడదు, చపాతీ తినమంటాం జ్వరం వస్తే తెలుగు వాళ్ళం సౌత్ ఇండియాలో. అదే బయట నార్త్ ఇండియాలో జ్వరం వస్తే నువ్వు అన్నం తినరా చపాతీ తినకూడదు అంటారు వాడు. ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళు 30 చపాతీలు 20 చపాతీలు తినగలుగుతారు వాళ్ళు. మనం చపాతీలు అంటే 2-3 తింటాం. అన్నం అంటే డిపెండింగ్ ఆన్ ది కెపాసిటీ వి డూ ఇట్. సో దేర్ ఆర్ ఆచారాలు, వ్యవహారాలు, ఆల్ దీస్ థింగ్స్ ఆర్ వెరీ డిఫరెంట్. అమావాస్య రోజు మంచిది కాదని మన వాళ్ళు అంటారు, అరవ వాళ్ళకి అమావాస్య మంచిది అంటారు. తూర్పు పడమరలు ఏవో so many things are there. If you try to put these types of issues and then try to validate with superficial knowledge and then push that something is very bad or very good for gross population, this may not be a very wise attempt. Maybe for 95% of the people, this will not be bad, but maybe for a small percentage of people this will be bad. So the question is, arguments like why a person who is already grown up should take something, ఏదో ఒకటి తినాలి కదా. There are so many types of varieties of food, right? So among these varieties of food, milk is also an option. Paneer is an option. There are many other options that are there. So the arguments that there are people who says that vegetarianism is very good and humans have developed in such a way that they should not eat meat, all this is completely bogus and for our own convenience that we have done it. And there are people who propagate the vegetarianism and vegan food are also taking things to a particular extreme. It's okay as long as it is fine. If you wanted to have a vegan food or a vegetarian food, you have it. If others would like to have something, we have to scientifically validate. I don't take, because it's because this is a brought up. From the beginning, somebody, if they say that egg is a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, you take it. I don't care whether it is a vegetarian or non-vegetarian. I cannot stand its smell, so I will not take. So I feel that for recommendation of a particular food, we need to follow chemical analysis and biochemistry and not so much about what will happen to this medical issues, because the disease health relationship is very poorly understood. And the biggest problem that we have about what is the ఇప్పుడు క్యాన్సర్ వచ్చింది, మన దగ్గర మూడు సాయివైట్, వైష్ణవైట్స్, జైనైట్స్ లాగానే ఒకడు పాయిజన్ ఇచ్చేవాడు ఉంటాడు, వాడు కెమిస్ట్. అవడిచ్చినా కూడా కెమోథెరపీ అంటాడు. ఇంకోటి కోసేవాడు ఉంటాడు, సర్జరీ, క్యాన్సర్ వచ్చిన కోయమంటాడు వాడు. ఇంకో మూడో వాడేమో రేడియేషన్, ఏమొచ్చినా రేడియేషన్ అంటాడు. All these things are incorrect, and immunotherapy is correct, is the one which is correct. So what they are trying to do is, instead of worrying about cancer, especially at different stages, to try to work on the health. So we have to understand the immunity, inflammation, adaptive immunity and innate immunity, genetics and epigenetics, and how different individuals are susceptible to the epigenetics and genetics is very important. And this is very poorly understood. There are people who are, more number of people are killed because of the medical doctors. Because what is the condition that they say that for the 5 different individuals, they give the same dose? There is always a therapeutic window. Everybody knows who studied pharmacology. A particular compound, when it is administered into a body, it will reach the bloodstream. And if the concentration of this particular compound is lower than the therapeutic window, it will be ineffective. If it is higher, it will be toxic. The therapeutic window is rather narrow. But this therapeutic window is very different for different individuals. So one has to understand and then try to probably listen to their body more. I think I may look traditional, the Surya Namaskaras or breathing exercise or something else, and you have to listen to your body and see what is the problem, and then probably also talk to a doctor and get a second opinion or a third opinion. But at the end of the day, for most of the lifestyle and chronic diseases, you are the best judge. But there are problems, immediate emergency. మనకి యాక్సిడెంట్ అయి కాలు ఇరిగింది అనుకోండి, వైద్య నారాయణ ఆ డాక్టర్ కాళ్ళ మీద పట్టండి, వాళ్ళు ఏం చెప్తే అది చేయొచ్చు. But on the other hand, if there is a chronic disease, it's better that you try to take control over that and try to understand any chronic disease, any chronic ailment. It's very important that the person who is undergoing that know about that particular issue better than others. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. Just before I leave, I just wanted to say that any pediatrician, when they see a child, they will ask the mother what type of a syrup that we have to give. Same crocin ఉంటుంది, paracetamol. ఈ Calpol ఇవ్వాలా, crocin ఇవ్వాలా, 4-5 companies ఉంటాయి. And for a particular child, a particular formulation will work. This is not a active ingredient. These are the APIs and other things. Like mana drug delivery systems or for pharmaceutical combination, what is it that you will be using is very important. So I feel that it's very important that we have to spend some time on our health and understand. And our health is understood by us, and it is very different from someone else's health. It is as different as different languages. Just because I know Telugu, it has a particular grammar. I cannot use the same grammar for Czech, or they have their grammar. And every individual or maybe a race will have a completely different grammar. So I think there is a lot that one has to understand, and learning is very important, and probably unlearning is more important, because this so-called mediocre people with knowledge that they have put, especially this Western guided people who take extreme steps or extreme reservations, we will have to validate and then only use it. So I am very, very particular about the food allergies and fascinated about the food allergies. And India is a country which has some allergies, but the number of allergies that are there in US, in other places, they're very, very high. So I wanted the allergies to be treated separately, rare metabolic disorders to be treated separately, lifestyle diseases to be treated separately. And this is only a small percentage of the total population. Total population in general will be able to take, just because nuts are allergic to some percentage of people, we cannot recommend that you cannot take nuts and sesame or some tomato, or egg is allergic to people. Can we say that you cannot take egg? Like that. So I think I should stop. I'm sorry if I get carried away a little bit, because I just heard a lecture in, what is this, in international conference with Japanese group. And we also have very interesting discussions, and had a late lunch at 2:40 and joined this. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to further discussions.
Thank you, Professor Narar Sastry garu, for the very balanced kind of thought process that you have initiated. I fully agree with you that each individual's composition, his own food habits should depend on various factors, and the individual is the best judge. Now, any of you would like to make any observations or elicit further information?
Yes.
Yes, Venkatesh.
Regarding biochemistry, each individual is biochemically different from each other. That is regarding human beings. That is what we call biochemical individuality. I agree. But when human beings have a biochemistry, specific biochemistry, when animals have a particular biochemistry, how animal food can agree with our biochemistry? That's my question.
Yeah, I think Dr. Van Prakash can also answer, because individuals, this life cycle that we take, animals will take plant food, plants will be depending on also animal feed, and this is a cycle. And it's not that if we don't take the animals, we have to take only, we have to become cannibals. It is essential that we will have to take some other organisms' food for the cycle to go. Because whatever happens for the cycle to go, it is essential that different organisms have to take food from each other.
Yes, Dr. Banu Prakash.
Yeah, the biochemistry, for that matter, the biochemistry is not made for plant foods or animal foods like that. See, I at least, I am a biochemist, MSc biochemistry, PhD biochemistry. Nowhere I come across something like that. Biochemistry of humans plant food. No, the biochemistry is based on the chemical nature of the things that you take. Food is basically compounds of nothing but chemicals like amino acids, carbohydrates, and then minerals, etc., etc. But I think Suryanarayana Garu may have a point that culturally or in the evolution how we have moved. I think that is important. We have to look at it in a larger perspective, not just because of the biochemistry or the thing that is happening today. There are two things in the evolution as well as the geography. Food is geographic specific. Like Dr. Narahari Shastri rightly mentioned, that people in the north eat mostly wheat-based thing, whereas in the south we eat mostly rice-based thing. All of a sudden, if you switch to the other way, it takes time for us, or sometimes it is very difficult to get adjusted to it. So that is geography of the food. And what Suryanarayana Garu is trying to say, whether it's biochemistry or otherwise, how we have evolved. Have you evolved on a plant system, or have you evolved on a based system? Over the years and from the beginning also. When I say from the beginning, from childhood. So that's how the physiology gets adopted. There is something called adaptation. For everything, the body tries to get adapted to it. Sometimes some individual will have very tough time to get adaptation, but many of them try to get adapted to it. That is the biochemistry or physiology, if you want to say. But since this point has come, I also want to add a couple of other comments here. So one is that, as Dr. Shastri rightly said, most of the chronic diseases are lifestyle. That's why they are called lifestyle diseases. So it all depends on our lifestyle. And of course, lifestyle is connected to physiology and biochemistry. I'll also take that point of diabetes, how you handle it. At least when I started my independent research career in NIN, I joined in 2000, in the middle of 2000. At that time, the HbA1c cutoff was 8. For diabetes control, what is the best control? HbA1c, glycosylated hemoglobin cutoff was 8%. Now most of our medicine and health is linked to industry and commercialization. And slowly after a few years, I think within no time, it has become 7. Now, the HbA1c cutoff for normal glucose control is 6.3. I really do not know whether we have to believe the 6.3 or we should go back to 8. But as long as Dr. Narahari Shastri said, I always tell my father is diabetic for the last 30 years. He is always worried when the glucose is more than 120. I said, as long as it's up to 150, 160, you are fine. If nothing happens, if you don't feel giddiness or, if you don't find any abnormalities, you are okay with it up to 150, 160. So these are all, kind of personalized physiology and personalized biochemistry also. But, it is very difficult for a scientific point of us to study each and every individual in a population. So we generalize things. In a generalizations, what happens, certain exceptions will come out. We need to look at these exceptions in a very careful manner. So how do we weigh this? And how do we unlearn from learning or learning for that matter? If not unlearning, but let's say learning. So these are somewhat philosophical issues, but I am not as experienced like as you people are. I'm also trying to understand these things. So these are the points I wanted to. But one concept also I want to add here. There is nothing like vegetarian and non-vegetarian. And in the nutrition parlance, of late we started using a word called for non-vegetarian, mixed diet. There is nothing like non-vegetarian. It is a mixed diet. Yeah. So these are some of the, and the holistic view is totally like, in a commercial world and, where everything, even food has become now food industry is growing up like anything. So you will have all sorts of processed foods and all sorts of adverse effects. So that is another problem. And I also want to take one more minute to this diabetes parlance, like even anemia. We are all, going by the some normal value set up by somebody else somewhere else. For example, anemia, it is 12 for a female, it is 13 for a male, or 14 and 6. But in India, there are a good number of people with 8 hemoglobin, with 9 hemoglobin, doing perfect. So now time has come for us to set our own hemoglobin values. Like that, there are many health parameters we need to set for ourselves. Keeping our geography, keeping our food, and keeping our climate in view. So I think these are my simple points to add to this group. Thank you very much.
Yes, Yes, Pradhan Sastri, you were wanting to say something.
Okay. So there are about 2-3 points which has triggered me so much in the last 5-6 years in my life. One is the hysterectomy in women. It is a big racket which is going on. Maybe Van Prakash knows this Kameshwari and
Yes.
so this is such a barbaric act that is going in a very organized way, where people are working, because this is still a medical problem. When to go for hysterectomy for women and when not to go for it. This is an issue. This, because still it's an unmet medical problem, but lots of people are exploiting it. Lots of people are exploiting it. And then there are some women who are going there, especially at the age of 28, because they are from a lower income group, they have 1 or 2 children, and if they don't want to have one more child, they will go for it because they can avoid these 3 days problem of menstrual cycle, and they can use those 3 days to get more wages. So people were recommending just like this, and then people have no idea that the uterus removal will cause a lots of long-term damage, but evidence is not there. And another case where several of my students, when they are going for pregnancy, if the glucose level is crossing 110, they are giving insulin. And I had a lot of discussion, and it is very much essential to give insulin, because at that particular, this gestational diabetes, when the infant is being formed, if they are having a higher levels of glucose in the bloodstream, the infant formation seem to be a problem. So I am convinced that in the gestational diabetes, during the 7th month or especially the 3rd trimester, they will give it for a few days to make it as a complete control, and they are coming up in a very nice way. So science play wonders, because I had a long discussion, especially with one of my students, and she had a gestational diabetes of 120, and they wanted to give insulin. At that particular point of time, I was reading quite a bit on diabetes, and I had a very long discussion with the medical doctor who they are treating. And they say that, no, this is very important, and I was convinced about it. So there are lots of very delicate issues, and people have to take steps to resolve a problem when the problem crops up. But if you try to bring up some issues which can be a general solutions for public, and if they get confused, like our Viramachineni Baba or some other, so many Babas are there. They come and then they will get something. What is that in Vijayawada banks? Somebody says that you got gas and some water, oil pulling fellows, water, you drink some 2-3 water liters. This is all fine. And I completely agree that you can do it for 4 months or 5 months, but whole of your life, you cannot get up at 4 o'clock and do oil pulling. Because, sir, 10 years before, all our oil pulling fellows also. And afterwards, oil pulling fashion has gone, like bell bottom or this. It's water drinking fashion. 2 liters of water you drink. And then coconut oil, all these, they speak so confidently. These are scientific superstitions. And they are supported by some of the people, and they go like I agree that if there is a special medical condition, if somebody is very highly overweight, or they will try to go for a different type of a treatment, they can go any type of, if somebody can go for a bariatric surgery, which is a recommended one, because if somebody has a 300 kilos person, bariatric surgery is probably recommended. But this bariatric surgery cannot be a norm for someone else who is just an overweight person. So I don't know whether I am making some sense or not. But health is very, very special indeed. It's something which is very close to somebody, and people have to take care of them. గొర్రె కషాయవాణ్ణి నమ్మినట్టు మనం డాక్టర్లను నమ్మకూడదు. సారీ మేడం రమాదేవి.
Yeah, sir. Since you picked up some that I don't want to repeat that name, but that particular keto diet, and then see in science we have school of thoughts. But now of late, individual thoughts of individuals have become a order of the day. So which is very dangerous. Like somebody prescribes keto diet, somebody says live only on millets, which is again another extreme. And somebody says live only on water. So this kind of trend is setting by individuals. I think scientific institutions, in one of the WhatsApp comments, I see that scientific institutions have to come to the public and remove all these things. I think there has to be a mechanism, Dr. Shastri Garu. I think we sometime have to be like, I was trying to see how can we counter Veeramachineni. So I don't want to take the name, but there is no way that I cannot. If I go individually, tomorrow I will be pulled up. No, are you representing the institute? What is the authority you have got? But there has to be a mechanism to address these issues.
I think it's not that we have to counter them because that is giving too much importance. We will have to bring the positive energy because millets also develop allergy. And among all the millets, rice is probably something which is easily digestible.
Yes. Yeah.
This is no. But having said that, the insulin resistance is very important. And in addition to insulin, what are the other things? Cortisol is very important. Leptin is very important. Simple thing, because మితంగా భోజనం చేయమంటారండి, కానీ తినటం మేబీ పీపుల్ లైక్ భాను ప్రకాష్ హ్యావ్ సో మచ్ కంట్రోల్ అండ్ పీపుల్ లైక్ నరేష్ శాస్త్రి డస్ నాట్ హ్యావ్ కంట్రోల్. కొత్త లాగిస్తాం కదా. సో ఇది అన్ని ఒక ఏ విషయంలో కంట్రోల్ ఉంటే సరిపోతుంది. అతి సర్వత్ర వర్జయేత్ అన్నట్టు అన్ని సరిగ్గా ఉంటే ఎందుకు ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ వస్తాయి చెప్పండి? కొంతమందిలో వస్తాయి, అన్నా ఉన్నా కూడా ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ రావచ్చు. ప్రాబబ్లీ బై నెగ్లెక్టింగ్ సంథింగ్ అండ్ సమ్ వైటమిన్ మైక్రోన్యూట్రియంట్ డెఫిషియన్సీ is important, chromium is so much important, selenium is important, zinc is very important, especially in COVID times, how to really increase this. And I think I would like to request Dr. Suryanarayan Garu to talk about one of the most fundamental issue which we are neglecting, which is of practical relevance. పాలు మంచిదే కాదా అని, కానీ మనకు వచ్చే పాలు పాలు కాదు, అది ఇంపార్టెంట్. అసలు మనకు వచ్చేది పాలు అయితే అది నెత్తిన పోసుకుంటామో కడుపులో పోసుకుంటామో సరిపోతుంది. నీళ్ళ పాల మనకి తెలియట్లేదు ఇక్కడ. సూర్యనారాయణ గారు మీరు చెప్పాలి, బికాస్ దిస్ ఇస్ ద ప్రాబ్లమ్. అడల్ట్రేషన్ ఇస్ ద హ్యూజ్ ప్రాబ్లం. ఏదో చేస్తాడు వాడు, పాలు అంటాడు, మీరు రైల్వే స్టేషన్లో నేను టీ తాగాలంటాడు, వాడు ఏం చేస్తాడో తెలియదు, అదేదో టీవీలో చూపిస్తాడు, ఇక్కడ అంటాడు మనకి ఆయిల్ వస్తుంది, ఆయిల్ 90 రూపాయలు కిలో అంటాడు. ఇప్పుడు సన్ఫ్లవర్ సీడ్స్ నుంచి ఆయిల్ తీస్తే 90 రూపాయల కిలో వస్తుందండి మనకి సన్ఫ్లవర్ ఆయిల్. మనకి వేరుశనగ మంచు నూనె ఎలా వస్తుంది, ఎట్లా వస్తుంది మనకి తెలియట్లేదు. ఏం మాయ చేస్తారో సార్, మీరు మాయల గురించి ఏమైనా మాట్లాడతారండి సూర్యనారాయణ గారు?
Yeah. Sundarana, my mic.
With the permission of the chair.
Yeah, please. Sundarana, my mic. The mic is not working. Yeah. Now
Is it
please
Now
go
it is
ahead.
working, no?
Yeah.
Now it is working.
Yeah.
The basic thing is the analysis of the quality control of anything is a very, very important aspect one has to look into. But that is not being taken care of now. I can tell you, even the most important quality control systems in the drugs industry, whatever the strips we get, suppose chloroquine or whatever is your ranitidine, all these things, if you test it, the percentage varies between 20% to 90%. The one with 90% will only work. The 20% will never work. So these are similarly oils also. Nobody does see. See, that's what the other day when I discussed with Dr. Bhanu Prakash Reddy, what he found says is we do not have any data. See, the gunny, the one oil which comes from the gunny and the oil which comes from the refined process, there is no data. What is the chemical constituents of this and what is the chemical constituents of this? We do not know. Which constituent is present more in that? All this data is not available. That is the biggest problem. So unless we have the good analytical systems, the quality control systems, we will not be able to say this is good or this is bad. See, chemically we know this chemical is going to create more of a cancerous material. This chemical is going to create this much. But we do not know how much this substance, the material consists of this. Similarly, with milk. If the milk is prepared from the detergents and all that, and the milk coming from cow, if it both looks like white, but what is the difference between this and that chemically, that we have to find out. If we do not do that, there is no, we cannot decide anything actually. This is the biggest problem. Now, whether it is oil or any product, food product, we should know that we should have the clear-cut quality control for everything. Unless the quality control systems are strengthened in the country, I think we will not be able to do anything. That's what I just want to say.
I fully agree with you, Mr. Suryanarayan Garu. And the last point I would like to make on behalf of all of us is maybe we will have a separate discussion on how to establish these normal practices of quality control.
Yes.
Given the existing setup, let us accept the fact that we are not going to structurally alter the whole of the country or the governance in setting up labs. There are existing facilities, there are existing institutions. So I think the positive way or the limited manner in which we can move forward is how do we link up these limited testing facilities with the existing scientific institutions which are already there. I think I'll certainly depend on the scientists, and probably maybe we can also invite some of the those who are in charge of the scientific labs in different state governments, and then see what kind of linkages can be established. It has been a wonderful, highly illuminating kind of discussion. We will certainly take these things forward. I fully agree with Professor Narahari Shastri saying that yes, nutrition is something which we have got to take into consideration. Our own empirical analysis, our own data, our own evolution, our agricultural practices, our food habits have been formed over a period of time. Drastic alteration, if it is recommended, we should also be backed up by a lot of other data. I also appreciate Mr. Venkateswarlu for putting forth certain points of view, which I think trigger these discussions. And I'm extremely grateful to Mr. Bhanu Prakash Reddy for coming up with the existing practices, for coming up with the composition of various types of milk, etc. I would certainly want to seek his help in conducting programs on behalf of a government organization where we can sensitize a lot of grassroots government functionaries, given our knowledge and our practices. And how do we, I think ultimately with all the individual emphasis on nutrition, we have to make some general recommendations for diet, because in government institutions for a common man, we need to equip him. But we have also to spread, as rightly pointed out by both Mr. I. Venkateswarlu and also Mr. Suryanarayan, to find out the quality products which are surfacing in the market. I think that's very important. Particularly, branding is not quality. Branding is a marketing strategy.
That's
How much of that branding is validated, and how we can validate this kind of branding? Now, in fact, today the government of India is coming up with proposals where they want to pin down somebody like a cinema actor. If he is advocating a particular thing and if it is proved to be incorrect, he is going to be taken to task. So this kind of an accountability of the quality of product, I think, is fixed on either the manufacturer or the distributor or the whoever is trying to. Because, unfortunately, the urban middle class is carried away by this branding. I think we need to strengthen the knowledge of those urban persons. Also build up a basic knowledge among the rural people. A lot of effort is being made by the government in sensitizing functionaries. As part of the new education policy, I think we need to also work with government institutions, and I'm sure an organization like the APHRDI or maybe other training institutions probably would want to establish linkages. I'll certainly see how best this can be done. Thank you very much for your wonderful participation and taking time off for almost 2 hours today, sir. Thank you very much, all of you. I also appreciate Rama for her very empirical kind of analysis and coming forward with observations which are borne out by her own experiences for the last 40, 45 years. Thank you very much.